human beings, but at the same time they've used their intellect to create literal machines, spaceships, that are capable of centuries ahead of human technology. They use their technology to blackmail the government into allowing them to misuse human citizens as they see fit. Their hope is to produce a child who will be the Antichrist, and or to produce thousands of people who are programmed to obey him because of abduction experiences. And, okay, we did that. Many people who have these abduction experiences crave them. They become addicted to them, even though they're scary. Even though, I mean, how would you like to be strapped to a table, unable to move, and having people sticking probes up your ears and stuff? I mean, anybody want to sign up for that one? But some people want it. I've actually talked to people that I say they are praying for it, to be abducted, because they, now these aren't Christians, of course, but they believe it's the next step in the evolution of human consciousness, to go through these, what these experiments are, the aliens are doing, the space brothers, pardon me, are doing, are to help us evolve into the next stage of human evolution. This seems to be the theme that this Whitley Strieber has, that wrote the book Communion, and he's done so much to popularize the abduction phenomenon. They're trying to deceive people into believing that they are indeed benevolent. And a lot of people are buying it. And I don't know how many of you have seen that movie Independence Day, you know, but there's that one scene that so reminds me of this, where at the beginning of the movie where there's all these wacko people up on top of this skyscraper, there's this enormous UFO that's like bigger than Yankee Stadium right over them, and they're standing there saying, "Beam me up, take me," you know, and then this big death ray comes down and, you know, blows up 5 city blocks. You know, I mean, that's so typical of the mentality of these people. The other thing is, now think about this one for a moment. Suppose I came up to just a typical person on the street, not a Christian, just some typical unsaved individual, and said, "Hey, I got a great deal for you. How'd you like to have a demon live inside of you?" Most people, I think, would probably say, "Get out of here." You know, even if they don't believe in God, even if they don't believe in, I don't want any demons, you know, that sounds too crazy, you know, whatever. But suppose this. Suppose I come up to someone like that and I say, "How would you like to have a vast, superior alien intelligence cohabit with you and live with you and talk to you and teach you the wonders of the universe?" There's a lot of people who would sign up for that. You know, it sounds pretty good, unless you know your Bible. And this is a phenomenon that's known as walk-ins. There's thousands of people walking around that claim that they have an alien living inside of them, an alien consciousness. I don't think it's literally an alien in the sense that they have like some, you know, like what is it, there's a Stargate thing where they have this worm parasite thing living inside of them that's like an alien. No, not quite like that. This is like demon possession. Except it isn't called that. It's been repackaged with Star Trek sci-fi, you know, glitter, and instead they've got this, it's like having Mr. Spock live inside of me, except no pointy ears, you know. So, I mean, the devil is so clever about this. The world is being prepared for this end times deception, and I believe it will involve Jupiter or Orion or both. I would not be surprised if these beings claim to come from Jupiter. That's because in ancient times the planet Jupiter was called Marduk, and both Marduk and Orion are associated with Nimrod, and of course Nimrod is the fountainhead of all false religion on this planet. He's the one that started Babylon. And, you know, the other thing too is that Jupiter is the name of the king of the gods. You know, Jove, Zeus, whatever you want to use, whatever term you want to use. And so he is a rival deity to Yahweh. So why wouldn't these beings come from that planet? Now, most Bible students know that Nimrod was the original head of the New World Order back in the days of Babel, and he is the #1 type of Antichrist in the whole Old Testament. So, works for me. Now we have the whole abduction phenomenon. The first reported abduction was in 1961. There may have been others before that, but this is the only one we know about. This couple, normal, average people, he was a postal worker, she was a housewife. He's now since deceased, but I think Betty Hill's still alive. This is Barney and Betty Hill. And they went out for a drive, and they saw a light in the sky, and all of a sudden their engine stopped and they lost 2 hours. The next thing they knew, it was 2 hours later. And they didn't know what was going on, but they both seemed kind of weirded out and creeped out by the experience. So much so that after, I don't know how long, months, maybe even years, they sought out the help of a hypnotist. And he hypnotized them. And the interesting thing is that they started speaking of the things we've discussed earlier, the idea of being taken aboard this craft by these little gray people that look very weird and spindly and have enormous almond-shaped eyes, beings that are very terrifying, and that you're strapped down and they're doing medical experiments. They're like taking stuff, you know, out of your body. They're putting probes in your nose and in your ears, and, you know, just nasty things altogether. And the interesting thing, the thing that really stunned everybody later on, is that Betty claims while she was on this table, she saw a star chart. And what's interesting is that in this star chart, she said there was X, Y, Z stars. And astronomers looked at that chart and said, well, this doesn't mean anything. Well, 20 or 30 years after this, they have the computer ability now to model constellations, and they said by using that software, they were able to turn it around and determine that this is what Earth would look like, the star system of Sol, our solar system, if it was seen from the star system Zeta Reticuli. Now that's kind of amazing. So anyhow, this has been a pretty reputable story that's never really been shaken. Essentially, this is how it goes. This is the abduction scenario. People are accosted by aliens, usually in either a deserted area outside or else in their bedrooms. They can't move. They're paralyzed. They feel as though someone is levitating them out of the room, or else little people are carrying them out of the room or whatever, and they're taken up to this ship. Sometimes they don't even see the ship. Sometimes they just wake up and they're in the ship. And the ship usually is very hard to describe. It has no configurations that are easy to put into words, and they're usually strapped down on a table, and experiments are being done to them of a very invasive nature. Blood and other bodily fluids are being extracted from them. There's often an excessive interest in the UFO crew in their reproductive organs. If they're women, sometimes they harvest ova from them. If they're men, they take seminal fluid from them. The person often reports being stored somewhere in a hive-like compartment, sometimes for days on end. The crew communicates with the person with something like telepathy. Often tiny devices are inserted in the person's body. Ears or nasal passages are the most common places. The person is usually abandoned by the crew at or near their place of abduction with their memory wiped clean. The person may not have any conscious knowledge of this until months or years later. But they have unexplained scars, memory flashes, nightmares, etc. Some women report hysterical pregnancies. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's where a woman has all the manifestations of pregnancy, but no baby comes out. And some people believe that's because they actually they impregnate these women either through artificial insemination or whatever, and then when the baby is about to come to term, they beam the baby out. So there's no trace of either a cesarean section or a normal, vaginal delivery. Other women have carried children to term. This happened to one person we prayed for. She had the baby. They said, oh, it's stillborn, and they whisked it out of the room. They never let her see it. That was on a military hospital in Germany, by the way. This stuff often is related to people who are in the military or their children, children of military people. None of these women had any conscious knowledge of who the father could be. Many of them, in fact, thought they were still virgins. Once these people came forward in the story, they often found themselves followed or hassled by the dread men in black in their ancient black Cadillacs. These are very strange-looking